The UPEI men's hockey team wrapped up the first half of the season on a high note, defeating the perennial powerhouse UNB Reds 3-1 at home. It was an electrifying night, and the players sent the fans home feeling really good about the second half. Today in Panther Primer, Bo and I are going to take a look at that first half of the season, the highlights, some of the lowlights, and also set the stage for what's going to surely be an exciting second half of this season. So Bo, welcome back.
It's great to be back.
Good, buddy.
Great to be back.
So Bo, if we look at the first half of the season, I talked about, that it's too bad that it had to end in December 4th with that win, because we walked out of here sky high after winning it. But if you look back at that first half of the season, what was the sort of stuck out for you in terms of maybe some of the successes or maybe some areas of improvements for the team?
Well, I think this year's team got off to on the right foot right off the hop. I mean, we can remember the home opener here. It's been a long time since we've seen that kind of caliber hockey here at the Bell Alliance Center here in Charlottetown. Play host to the top-seeded UNB Reds. You take them all the way into extra time. It was a great hockey game. It really showed the fans that this is a team that the community can get behind. This something that the students and staff and faculty at UPEI want to get behind. Is they move forward and what the start of the season opener for next year is going to mean. It's going to be a national host and I think the first half just showed how much parity. Again, it's a word that we use with this league all the time. You and I are very familiar with it, Norman, when we come into this rink, and it's going to be the same in the second half. The couple of games that we do get to see here. Any team can win on any given night, and those 2 points at the end of the night are critical. It doesn't matter if it's the first game of the season or the last game of the season. So I thought there was, showed signs of greatness in those first 10 games. I thought there was, some things that, needed to be worked on. One of those being, discipline. There was a message that head coach Forbes McPherson he preached right from the start of the season, and in those first 10 games it was a problem. And what happens? Well, after those 10 games, they put a thrashing on St. FX here. It was really an opportunity to make a statement game, and they did make a statement that night. It got heated here. Fans were injected that night with a little bit. Okay, this is
Coaches
a little bit of island hockey too, right? This is kind of feels like old island hockey. But after that, they go on a 5-game losing streak, and it's that discipline that they didn't take care of it on a review of the first 10 games that really started to sneak up and creep in, and then it starts to cost them some wins in a critical time of the season. So. Also during that time, I thought the Caleb Pearson injury played a big part too. You lose a guy like that. He was a pretty near point a game pace. The fans in the rink really like what he brought to the table. He has that knacky ability to get that shot away from a sneaky angle and beat goaltenders. And if it ever so works out that he can make a return, in the playoffs, it's just like adding a new guy back into the lineup. But I thought that, if you look at lowlights, losing that body gave guys an opportunity. So there are some highlights that come from it. But when you lose a big guy like that was on a point-a-game pace and really starting to settle in to himself in Charlottetown and in this AUS conference, that was probably one of the ones. And then to close it out on the 3-game winning streak, I mean, that's a critical win over Dalhousie. If you look at the standings and currently sitting in
especially the way it was kind of going in the downhill slide. That was when we talked about that being a playoff game with the importance of that.
Yeah, and that's a huge win, right? You get that win and you look back over the first half and see that you're tied for Dalhousie. If you don't get that win that night, you're 2 points back, and you're sitting in fourth, and where now you're looking to make a push to be second. You're not looking to say, okay, we got to get to third. We're sitting tied for third. Our push is to be second, and UNB's they're out of the reach here with the condensed schedule that's going to happen here in the second half. But if you can move into that second place spot, guarantee yourself some home ice here in the playoffs, I think that's a big thing. And when we talk about UNB and you look back over the first half, they're ranked the #1 team in the country. There's nothing to hide there, and You took 4 points away from that UNB team.
4 of 6.
4 of 6 in the first half. And probably what some would say, I know for me, it may have been one of the best games that I've seen at the Bell Alliance Center from the UPEI Panthers.
Agreed.
In recent memory, no question. For 60 minutes now, yes, UNB was short-staffed, but full staff.
The first 2 were pretty good too.
First 2 were great hockey. That's what you don't roll into Fredericton, or UNB doesn't roll into here, and you don't get a great hockey game that goes to extra time on 2 occasions, and then you pick up a 3-1 victory. At Christmas time, you were the only team that scored 2 goals on Ryland Parenteau all season long.
Right.
Like, that's not the win's one thing. Feathers in your cap like that just kind of add to it. So for me to close it out with that big victory, I mean, the layoff, it kind of takes a little bit of momentum, but that juice from that night when these guys return back to the ice, this weekend or whenever they finally get back out there, it's still going to be there. That's the last memory they have of wearing that jersey, and it's going to be, okay, let's get ready to rock and roll for second half.
I think another highlight for me too, Bo, just in addition to what you were saying, was the improvement on the defensive side of the game. I think when you look at the unheralded play of Matt Brassard, Connor McCachran, Andrew Pico, Curtis Henry coming in. I mean, he a guy who really, we saw real growth in his game over the half. And then you get a guy like, boots on the ground, guy like Tanner McCabe. Right?
And I know you're going to say his name when you say boots on the ground.
Yeah, so then, but you look at that, I mean, that was kind of a deficiency that really got addressed. And when you look at it, it's the second best team. I mean, second best defense in the league right now. We all know defense wins championships. Capriati's come in. We're probably going to talk about him in a minute. But if you look at that, the defensive part of the game, coupled with the offense that we're having, the depth that we're having, can set us up well too. So just sort of speaking on the individual side of some things, Bo, maybe we can highlight a couple of players who, for us, sort of stood out in the first half of play.
Yeah, well, when it doesn't matter what hockey team you're around at what level, there's always going to be those guys that once they put the jersey on, you know what you're getting from them every night, and they're always going to, unless something dramatically goes wrong. And for me, 2 of those guys are Owen Hedrick and Kyle Maximovich. I mean, they're elite. They're the elite crop of their group. So those are 2 guys that, we can sit here back and forth. We've spent many nights in the booth talking about those 2 guys. For me, Owen, we've already chatted about him.
Yeah. Enough said.
For me, one thing that I've noticed from Kyle Maximovich's game that, creeps in, and I read an article on The Athletic the other day about talking to players about small skills that don't get noticed by the Kyle Maximovich's ability to steal pucks, lift sticks, clean.
Mark Stone-like.
Well, it's just... It's something that I noticed from his game in the first half that, not everybody coming to the rink's going to see, but when you watch as close as we do. So, yeah, Kyle Maximovich has the points. Probably maybe not as many as he would have liked in the first half, but he's brought the complete game.
Totally.
And, for me, the first year really getting an opportunity to watch Kyle Maximovich play, if he wants to play at that complete game level and be near a point-a-game player, he's going to be a big-time difference maker for this Panthers program moving forward.
For me, I think the Jonah Capriati story is the feel-good story of the first half for sure for me. You look at a guy who came in here totally complete unknown.
On opening night, there was nobody in the rink that could
say his name.
That knew how to say
it. But everyone thought he was from Charlottetown. That's how little we knew about the guy. Everyone thought he was from Charlottetown. But for him to come in here, and what I loved about him, we've talked repeatedly about his compete level. We've talked about the positive attitude that he brings into the building on a daily basis. And you can see the joy that he has in playing nets. He gets fired up. The harder the competition, the harder this guy plays, right? And for him to come in the manner that he did, make the impact that he has had, fill a need that we really had to address, for him to come in and do that, man, that's for me is the feel-good story of the term. And I would couple that with the local boy, TJ Shea. If you look at how his level of play, right from the first game, he was a different player. From the exhibition game when he sent Etienne Montpetit for a pizza and a goalie went in and sent him wild. But he's a guy who's not only contributing offensively, he's one of the best open ice hitting forwards I've seen in the last little while. And, you know, he talked about it, his physical play, a good Western boy coming in, and a good fisherman. He's got that hard bones, that hard body. He's playing the right way. And for me, he's been a really good feel-good story as well, too.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Jonah. I mean, he's the cream of the crop. He comes in here as an unknown when it comes to stories, and, you know, vaults himself up. You do the Panther primer, you allow people to get to know who Jonah Capriotti is, and it's just like this community has formed around him. And he gave, no question, his stats don't lie. Second in goals against average, third in save percentage, in the best league in the country for, you know, AUS, for U Sports. And then you talk about TJ Shea. For me, TJ's one of those guys that, if I was any one of those 11 other forwards on this UPI team, he's the guy that I want on my line. He's the guy I want to play with. Because, yes, he scores goals. Yes, he, you know, puts up points. But he's the first guy in the forecheck. He's not afraid to lay the body. And he's a guy that, if I want somebody in my corner, knowing that he's from Western Prince Edward Island and he's a, you know, hard-working guy, he's the guy that I want to have my back.
Well, let's not forget about Troy Lajeunesse either.
No, hey, listen, Troy Lajeunesse, obviously the tools have always been there for Troy Lajeunesse. They don't just develop over the course of, he missed a full season and here, you know, everybody's missed that full season. And now it's about the consistency in his game. And it's not just, okay, this guy's putting points up. No, this guy's playing defensive hockey in his own zone. He's winning faceoffs. It's everything that you can't see from reading the stat line is what Troy Lajeunesse has brought to this Panthers team in the first half, creating opportunities. He's got jets when he can get into sneaky open ice. He's gone. You know, he's taking guys wide. He's beating them. And he had a couple opportunities in the first half too that he didn't score on. That if he had of,
it's an open net in St. Mary's.
Troy Lajeunesse would have been the guy that we were starting this segment off with. You know, instead of the guy at the bottom. But he's not doing it quietly. He may be the last guy that we've named off here, but Troy Lajeunesse's first half, if he can couple, well, he's already over his previous highest points total in the first half over a complete season. If he can mold that consistency into the second half, this guy is a player, and when he finishes at UPEI, whenever that may be, there'll be a phone ringing somewhere along the way.
Interesting part too, what Troy said about one of the things he attributed success to is sort of eating well and sleeping well and taking care of himself. So hopefully he continues to eat well and take care of himself second half. So a couple of players, I mean, we always talk about the ones that draw the big attention.
The points.
Right.
The stat sheet.
Or the ones who are doing it with flair, style, whatever. But there's always guys who are kind of playing, maybe, I wouldn't say necessarily punching above their weight, but maybe turning our heads a little bit more than we expected coming into the start of the season. Would be someone for you that kind of does that.
I kind of got a pair of guys and they play together. They're that second D pair in Connor McEachran and Matt Broussard. Two different players when you look at you go look at their stats on Elite Prospects or whatever it may be. But for me, they've maybe become one of the best second pair D in the AUS. I mean, you look at the top pair, this just solidifies your D core. If Tanner McCabe and Andrew Pico are playing those third minutes as well as they have in the first half, and that second core is that's a six core D man that I'd be pretty happy with in any team in this conference. But for me, Connor's game has really evolved into, being that steady Eddie guy in the back end, good with his stick, great first breakout pass, but also
his mobility,
his great set of skates. I mean, he probably gets that honest enough once it comes in. But you look at these guys, a guy like Connor McEachran, Carson McKinnon, I know we're probably going to touch on him a little bit. These are guys that have really benefited from having that year off to work and hone skills that maybe in a full course of a season they just didn't have time to do so. Now they have school, it's online, they get to come to the rink a little bit, they really get to hone in on little things that they maybe didn't, and I think that's where it goes back to his partner in Matt Broussard. Matt Broussard, score goals, got a sneaky shot, really good offensively. For me, it's what he's brought on the defensive side of his hockey game. Talk about mobility, his mobility has been much better in this first half. He's a guy that has been really strong in his own zone, good with the first breakout pass, and just his defensive mobility I thought has gotten a lot stronger through his time time at UPI.
And in fairness to him, he walked in partway through a season, came in, and it took that little bit of an adjustment for him to get used to it, and here he is.
Yeah, he just looks like a guy that's really improved his skating, really improved his mobility, and, there's a void there, and somebody's going to have to fill it. It's probably going to be collectively, but two guys that I see stepping up to be able to maybe eat some more minutes is that second pair, whatever the pairings may be in the second half. But if Connor McEachern and Matt Broussard are as good as they were in the first half, the loss of Owen Hedrick, yes, it's still big, but it's toned down a little bit if those guys are going to play at that level.
Well, and the question, I guess, remains, too, is what's Cole Candela? We got a couple of new bodies coming in, Cole Candela, defenseman, Cedric Andre, a goaltender, and Dalen Prue up front as well, too. And so if we look at a guy like Candela and Andre, they're still kind of unknowns, right? We know that Cedric Andre was a big goaltender with Ottawa when they were making that run a couple of years ago, which got cut off in the COVID. You look at a guy like Candela, he's got the experience playing overseas. What are they going to bring? Are they going to be able to fill the void created by an Owen Hedrick departure? And will Cedric Andre be able to provide that 1A, 1B battle that you always want to be looking for in goaltenders, that healthy competition, respectful competition between him and Jonah Capriati?
Well, for me, Cole Candela is the guy that comes in here, hey, he's drafted to the NHL. That just doesn't happen every day. 5 OHL seasons. He's got some pro experience underneath his belt. I feel that once Cole Candela gets settled into playing, he's had a long extended break. He's coming in at a difficult time. Yeah. He's probably put the work in. He's probably ready to go physically. But until you get out there and really get in those game touches, but I think he's got high-end skill, a real activeness to join the rush and make plays. And, no question, if Cole Candela is coming as advertised, he's really going to benefit the blue line and probably give them a little bit of a more offensive threat. I think he's a guy that probably can do things that some other guys just can't do.
Yeah. Well, the good thing about it, Bo, is we are so excited to be back in. The boys are getting back in against Dalhousie this weekend. For those of you who can make it out, we'd love to have you out live in attendance. If you can't, tune in and catch me and Bo on AUS TV, and we'll be bringing you the action for here the rest of the season. So, Bo, thanks for being a part of the segment.
No, it's great to make the Panther Primer debut, and hopefully maybe we're doing this segment again heading into the playoffs, or
there we go,
or maybe a trip to Wolfville late in the spring.
Wouldn't that be sweet? All right, thanks, Bo. Thanks for coming in.